All right, Paul, you wanted to be introduced because we have multiple co-hosts on this show. And I mean, you're the main guy, but you felt it would be good just to give a little intro for the episode. So
I am
introduce
the main
yourself.
guy. Don't you forget that. No, it was an idea that popped into my mind because when people tune into, we talked about this, obviously you have multiple co-hosts. Justin and Celine,
yes.
We've got Teresa, Ed and Mike have been on the show. So it's always good to know who you partnered up with for this particular episode that people are tuning in on. So for today's episode, it's Paul and Clark show.
It is. I'm wanting to make sure everybody understands. This is Paul. Paul. We don't say last names, or we try to avoid them. But Paul is joining me today from Whitby, Ontario, as co-host. So I hope that helps everybody who's wondering about who Paul is. He's if you may know Paul from such controversial topics as needles in the park or Christmas lights.
Yeah, we don't want people to say, that asshole, I'm going to turn this off now.
Yeah. Oh, they will. Well, they might not turn it off because I think they tune in just to hear some of the crazy things that you tend to say.
Things,
so
okay. Hopefully, I don't think I'm too controversial, but it's always good to spark some good debate and to speak your mind. I'm sure people like to hear that.
Hey, we talked about earlier having timers. We set up all these timers for our segments. This is a bit of a peek behind the technical curtain for those out there who may or may not care. But we've put a little timer on so that we are more brief and succinct with our topics. So did I just break that magic wall, that third wall between us and the audience by saying that?
I think our audience is going to be appreciative that we're not, we're trying to make a good effort not to ramble on and go off topic too much.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of which, we have a few topics today. One is we're going to give just an ever so slight update on the autonomous vehicle, the bus in your neighborhood that you have a quick update on. We're going to talk a little bit about this new lockdown that we're in. We're going to be brief about it, but I did something here at my place to combat some of that lockdown blues that we're dealing with. We're also introducing a new segment, a word of the day. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. Then into our main topics, you want to talk about gas money. Remember that when we were younger and we used to hear like, hey, man, you got to throw me some gas money.
Yeah, I got a story on that one.
Then we're going to talk about some tech talk, a couple of technical things in the technology industry, what I think are outdated tech things that still tend to show up every now and then. We will talk about my experience with the taxation. I'm not going to give their full name on the air here because you never know who's scanning these things, these bots out there that like to scan for stuff. But we're going to talk about the taxation services in Canada, my experience with them last week, and that we're also going to. Then we're going to talk about what we're watching, followed up by some weird news. Each of us has a story today. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Lots of stuff on the agenda, so let's get to it.
All right. So we've got, you wanted to talk about a theme song. That was the first thing you actually wanted to talk about.
Yeah, really.
What's your thinking on that?
Well,
you really believe this show deserves a theme song?
I think we do deserve a theme song because, you hear in a lot of other podcasts and a lot of radio shows, there's always like a theme song that kind of, sets it up, sets the tone. As soon as you click on the podcast episode, you'll hear a distinctive theme song. So it's just an idea. And, I think we can have some fun with this. And maybe if some of our listeners have some suggestions, they can, by all means, they can offer some ideas as to what we can do for a theme song, but just a short little, jingle, like, ditty. little whimsical ditty. Jingle of maybe like 10, 15 seconds just to set things up, and then something to...
Oh, you jumped the gun there. So, okay, it's obvious we need to talk about our word of the day then. So the word of the day today is whimsical.
And we'll circle back to being whimsical.
All right, so the idea here is we give a definition of this, which is whimsical, playfully quaint or fanciful, especially in an appealing and amusing way, i.e. a whimsical sense of humor. And second definition, acting or behaving in a capricious manner. the whimsical arbitrariness of autocracy. That's the example they use here. I have no idea what the hell that
And
even
if you're
means.
wondering why we're introducing the word of the day, is that both Clark and I used to be members of Toastmasters. Anyone who's familiar with Toastmasters, I don't know if they still do it, but one of the things they used to do in their meetings is have a word of the day. And the objective would be to try to insert this word of the day within your speech or your table topic or whatever. If you happen to have a speaking role for that particular meeting, is to try to interject this word of the day, because it helps to, first of all, learn a word or use a word that you may not have heard about for quite some time, more of an obscure word. So yeah, if you hear us say whimsical, you'll know why. It's not because we are, come whimsical in our minds. It's just because we're trying to challenge ourselves a little bit to this word of the day thing.
All right. So whimsical, and for our guests, and for our listeners, think about using whimsical during your day.
Absolutely, yeah.
How can you insert this word into your work day, your meetings? It's our personal challenge to you. All right, back to that theme song. The only challenge with theme songs is that you have licensing issues. So if we use like royalty music that's royalty free, it's okay. But if it's like a pop song or something, a rap song, which I think is probably suited for, I think a rap song would make a great theme song for our podcast. So that's the only concern about theme songs.
It can be something very generic, though. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a Rocky theme or anything like that. It can just be like a standard sort of a jingle or something very generic just to set things up.
All right. Well, let's give that some thought. If some listeners have some ideas around that, then we'd be all ears for it. Okay, the autonomous vehicle. Give us the quick down and dirty on this bus. What's happening?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to promise that this will be the last update on this autonomous vehicle. I don't want to keep...
Ollie was
I don't want to
name.
keep beating a dead horse, because we've talked about this autonomous vehicle a couple of times here. So the reason why we're just bringing it up for the very last time here is just to sort of put a bow on this whole scenario here. The latest update is that the manufacturer of this autonomous vehicle, a company by the name of Local Motors, and it looks like it's a U.S. company. I think they're based out of Las Vegas. Anyway, a headline that I read here is that this company, Local Motors, will discontinue operations. So looks like they are going out of business. So
this is on the heels of the fact that this had they had an accident in December,
so as you know,
of which the driver or attendant was seriously injured.
Exactly, yeah.
And there was an investigation, and we actually have the results of that investigation too, right?
Yes. So apparently, from what I understand, is that the vehicle was put in manual mode. So it was actually driver error. The attendant on board was critically injured, but from what I understand, he has recovered and he's going to be okay.
He was released. And I want to just make the point, as we have 9 seconds left in this, that this vehicle, the accident occurred in manual mode. So stop bashing technology, folks.
Yeah. This
is coming. Automation, automated vehicles, autonomous vehicles, it's coming. Whether you like it or not, don't bash it. The guy crashed it. It wasn't technology's fault. Plain and simple. We're glad he's better, but don't bash autonomous vehicles. They're coming. So
it's interesting you say don't bash the autonomous vehicles because it's coming, because I don't know if it's coming according to this article here. So this article is talking about this Ollie shuttle, and it says here that quite a few of the quote unquote the AV shuttle companies, there's another company called Optimus Ride. They actually discontinued their operations earlier this year as well. But apparently this company in particular, this Local Motors, has seen declining sales. Part of the problem has been COVID. Because of COVID, a lot of people are not taking public transit options. So a lot of public transit departments have stopped funding mobility projects in favor of shoring up their finances and core operations. So yeah, a lot of municipalities, a lot of you know, a lot of transit companies are not investing money in these automated shuttles. So this incident that happened last month here in Whitby with the crash, that was, from what I understand, that was kind of the nail in the coffin for this company. Because I'm assuming that there's going to be probably some substantial litigation coming out of this. And I think this was kind of like the last straw, that I don't think they could continue operations anymore.
Well, certainly nothing whimsical about this at all.
No, there isn't.
All right, we're breaking our promise. We said we were going to talk only for, I think, 2 minutes on this, and it's been like 5 or something. So we are now officially putting the whimsical bus to bed.
Yeah, so
and
you're right.
That will be the last time we mention it.
So the final point in the story is that no more autonomous vehicle. I think it's dead, at least for now.
Okay, quick update. I built an ice rink again. This is my 5th year building the ice rink. It's in the backyard. It's I was actually hoping to escape making it this year, but my family convinced me to do it, and I'm really glad I did. It's minus 21, no, minus 19 right now here in Toronto. Perfect for an ice rink, and my son was out skating on it this morning, and yeah, it's so far so good.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's good when you can take on those projects and add some fun to the winter, because on days when you have minus 20 degrees, it can be a little depressing out there. So the fact that you have skating rink in the backyard is nice. As you had mentioned before, we are in another lockdown here in Ontario, so a lot of the public skating rinks are closed.
The indoor ones, but there's a bunch of outdoor ones that are open.
So with indoor public skating is closed for now, and hockey teams are on hiatus. So to have that in your backyard, that's a nice thing to have. That way, good for physical fitness, good for fun. So you're a good dad, Clark. Way to go.
Well, thank you. And I'll just so people know, it's 26 feet by 16 feet in size. Not massive, but it's good for kids. I installed it on Monday. It was minus 21 on Monday, and then we had a couple of mild days, but that's okay because it was the nice foundation frozen on Monday through Tuesday, and then we had a couple mild days, and now through this whole weekend it's supposed to be like minus 15, 16, up to minus 21, so perfect. Okay, Paul, you wanted to talk about gas money, and I always think of gas money as something that goes back to high school, maybe when everybody was first getting their car, and you were short on cash, and gas money was kind of a thing. If somebody drove, then you would pay that person throw me some gas money, throw them some gas money, that kind of stuff. You want to talk about this today because I think it's something that's come up recently for you. So what's going on? Yeah,
so you're right. In terms of introducing the topic of gas money, you are correct in the sense that, you know, when you do think of gas money, it's something that when you're a student in high school and, you know, you got your first car and you're scraping together money for gas. But when you get to our age, we are above the age of 40, you typically don't really ask people for gas. And, you know, for me, I would only ask someone for gas if, let's say, we were taking a long trip together. And even then, it would be like, okay, I'll pay for a tank, you pay for a tank, that type of thing.
Right.
Yep. But yeah, the reason I brought this up is because my wife sort of had a bit of a interesting experience with this. With a friend of hers, where I guess they had agreed to get together to go out for a drive. This was, you know, a couple of months ago. And, you know, just out for a drive for the afternoon, nothing fancy, you know, maybe stop in at a few stores or whatever. But no specific.
This was like an outing, just an outing, like a day trip somewhere.
Just an outing, but no errands. So anyway,
but what was errands?
Well, no, it's not like my wife said, "Oh, there's a place I need to go. Can you drive me?" That type of thing. This was just like, "Hey, let's get in the car and let's drive around and let's spend the afternoon together."
Okay. And how long was the expectation of this? Like an afternoon?
Yeah, I think an afternoon, like maybe 3 hours or so. So what was weird about it is that there was sort of an indication of gas money. And I'm not sure
At what point? The beginning, the middle, the
I
end?
think maybe around the beginning. And I'm not sure. I guess my wife kind of, I don't know if she volunteered to give or offered to give gas money.
Out of the blue, she offered, or?
Yeah, maybe. But it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of throw it out there to say, hey, you know, do you want some gas money? Thinking that the response would be, no, don't worry about it. But when the response is, yeah, okay, it kind of takes you a little bit off guard to the point where they were almost expecting her to give her gas money, which I thought was a bit weird.
Well, I think it's a bit weird that she brought it up first, though. Are you sure she brought it up first?
Yeah, like I guess she kind of mentioned it in some way, like, oh, do you thanks for the afternoon driving around, do you want me to throw you some gas money or whatever? And instead of the response being no, don't worry about it, it was yes. Like the response was yes, in terms of I would expect gas money, which I thought was a bit odd. So yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of throw it out there thinking that the person's going to say no. And if someone, like, for example, if you and I got together, drove around for the afternoon and you said, hey, Paul, can I throw you some gas money? My response would be, no, don't worry about it.
Well, my thing is I would never offer that.
Yeah.
I would. But it's an afternoon out, like, I wouldn't even think twice about it. Would you think twice about it?
Yeah.
Yes? Your answer is saying yes?
No. Well, no, like I wouldn't expect someone to give me gas money. Like if you had called me up and for whatever reason you couldn't drive or whatever, and you said, hey, Paul, I've got a few errands to run. Do you mind driving me to these stores? Then I can understand someone saying, here's some gas money, or a little bit of an expectation to say, hey, throw me $10 just because I drove you around and did some errands for you.
Okay.
That's understandable. Or if I did something to...
Yeah, my take on this is the only time... Well, I'll give you my take. Gas money is only a factor... Well, two possible places it shows up, as far as I'm concerned, is if someone borrows my car, which occasionally does happen, that... my sister-in-law borrows our car now and then because it's a little bit bigger. It's an SUV, and they sometimes have stuff they want to take to a storage unit or whatever. And it's a bit far away. It's like half an hour from here or something like that. And they borrow the car basically for an afternoon. They always bring it back filled at whatever it was before they left. In fact, I think they might even fill it to the top just as a courtesy. They just fill the tank. When they come back, it's a full tank. And I don't even know if they left with a full tank. But that I think that's what I would do if I borrowed someone's car. I would replenish at least the gas I used, if not maybe top it right up or whatever, just because I'm thankful that they're lending me their vehicle.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I think the long road trip thing, that's cool. I think, we stop for gas, you fill up this time, I fill up the next time, like do a tandem. If there's three of us, we do that. That totally makes sense. Yeah, but to go out on a day trip. We've done that
before. You and I, we've taken some road trips where, we take a
long
turn
trips to Windsor or Detroit or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it is a bit odd from you've picked me up from the train a few times when we go see hockey games, and I wouldn't imagine you to think that I should throw you. I mean, I appreciate you picked me up at the train and stuff, but to me, it's almost like part of the whole night. Like I come from half an hour away by train to see you, and at some point, I'm going to drive you somewhere. I don't even think about that kind of stuff. It's just going to kind of work itself out.
Yeah, I would never ask you for gas money, nor would I ever expect it. And if you offered me gas money, I would say no, because what's the point in taking $10? Like it really doesn't make any difference, especially if I'm in the car with you. Yeah. So I don't know. It just came across as something that it comes across as being cheap. Let's face it. That's my sentiment on it. And it's just, when you're taking quote unquote just a drive, it comes across as being a bit cheap. All
right, well, here's another thing.
When there's the expectation for gas money.
There's a little something that comes out of this as well, though, is that if you offer something and someone says, okay, well, why bring up something if there's a chance that they're going to say okay? It's kind of like paying for the tab, like when the bill comes and you say, you know what, let me get this. And someone says, okay.
Yeah.
To me, when you make a statement like that, you should expect the answer could be yes and not be upset about it.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming with that. Where
is that different than gas money? Maybe,
but no, you're right. If you say, hey, can I throw you some gas money? Yeah, then you're right. That person does have the right to say yes. As a matter of fact, I would like gas money. But it's one of those things where you ask a question thinking and expecting someone to say no. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. No big deal, that type of thing. So when someone says yes, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll give you some gas money.
Throw that out there.
It creates some awkwardness, don't you think?
It's a bit odd, but maybe if I knew the circumstances a little more. I mean, if you do have someone that maybe doesn't, that, you know, is really watching the money and that sort of thing, then I think we should give those people a chance to, we should have some empathy for that. But I think in a general scenario, it's a bit odd, and I would say it's something that you don't generally do at our age. Mm-hmm. It's very, to me, something that's more of a high school kind of college sort of thing.
You're right. Yeah. Like yes, if someone who doesn't have a lot of money or a student, yeah, half a tank of gas is a big deal to those people. But we're talking about just people within our, I guess, circle of friends that don't really need the money. You know, getting a $10, $15 or $20 in gas money is not going to make a big deal. So anyway, I just bring it up because it just seemed a bit odd. And yeah, if any of our listeners have any stories or any thoughts on this, then I'd be interested. I'd be interested to hear in a minute.
You can email us at wetalkedaboutthis99@gmail.com. Always interested in feedback and thoughts on any of the topics that we talk about. This episode is brought to you by Pace Painting. Pace Painting, serving all your painting needs, whether it's commercial or residential. Now, full disclosure, Pete is my brother-in-law, and I would recommend him to do work for anyone. He's done several jobs for us. We've always been satisfied. We've recommended him to friends and family. He's great. Email Peter at paintwithpace@gmail.com or visit his Facebook page at Pace Painting Inc. That's paintwithpace@gmail.com or visit his Facebook page, Pace Painting Inc. Okay, yesterday I called somebody, Paul, and I left them a voicemail. That word voicemail just is so foreign to me now. When's the last time you left someone a voicemail? Or maybe do you leave people voicemails?
I do, yeah. I do leave voicemails more so for work. You know, if I'm trying to get a hold of someone to book
Would you
an
leave a
appointment.
friend a voicemail?
Usually I don't, because if it's a friend, I'll typically text them. It's easier just to send a text. But yeah, voicemails is usually just for business purposes. And even then, typically, if I do leave a voicemail, I might follow up with an email just saying, hey, I left you a voicemail, and just a very brief synopsis of what it is that I'm asking about.
Right. Okay. So I called this friend, and I called him last week, and I didn't leave a voicemail. And then I called him back just yesterday because I hadn't heard from him, and I left a voicemail. He called me back within 2 minutes. And he said, hey, I don't answer calls. I don't know if I don't know the name. And I guess he didn't have my number stored on his phone or whatever. And he said, but I heard your voicemail, or it came to him in a text format. So he said, I read your voicemail and I called you right back. He says, I admit I'm a screener, like a phone screener. And I'm a screener too. I don't generally like to answer the numbers I don't know. I don't know how many times I miss out on interesting people calling me, probably hardly ever, but
I'm the same way.
It just made me
well.
think, yeah, most people are screening their calls these days.
You have to, because there's so many junk calls that come through, like a lot of scammers, you know, a lot of duct cleaning services. You know, there's a lot of bullshit phone calls that come across your phone in a typical day. So yeah, I'm guilty of screening as well. And my philosophy is that, you know, if someone really wants to get a hold of me, they'll leave me a voicemail. So I do check.
Do listen to them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
If you get one, you'll listen. I mean, I find many times where I see when I check my voicemail on the odd time I do, it'll say, you have 6 unheard messages.
Yeah. No, I do check my messages. Like, not every day, but if you do leave me a message, I will get back to you probably within 24 hours.
Is voicemail a thing that's going away? Like, it'll eventually become obsolete?
I don't know if it'll be obsolete, but it's definitely no longer as important as it used to be. You know, the old days where, you know, you would leave a message for someone, whether it's on their voicemail or with reception, and they would call in to get their messages. You know, these days, it's most stuff is done through email. I'd say like 90% through email. So, yeah, it's interesting. Interesting experience you had with voicemail, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be completely obsolete.
Yesterday, Paul, I concluded some business I had with the Canadian Taxation Services after, I'll call it a bit of a saga over the last week and a half. I wanted to just quickly talk about a couple things that came up in my attempts to get information from the Canadian Taxation Services. First of all, when I called, you get the usual, thank you for calling. And I had to go through 5 different layers of prompts. If you want English, press 1. If you want French, press 2. If you want, there was 5 choices of things. Do you want information about how much you owe? Do you have a question about your recent tax form? Press 2. It was like 5 things you choose from. You push one of those, and then it's like it took me 2 minutes just to get through to the part where I'm actually going to now wait for somebody to talk to me. Well, when I got to that part, it was, if you would like, the current hold time is is 1.5 to 2 hours.
Wow.
Would you like to hold? Press 1. Or if you would like to be called back, push 2. So I think, I'm not waiting for an hour and a half. I'll push 2. I pushed 2, and they said, thank you. Unfortunately, our queue times are completely full. Please call back again later.
Oh, geez.
So I called back right away because I thought maybe I can get into the queue again. And I went through the whole thing. I mean, I was getting to, and you can't ever push these buttons early. Like, you can't push 1 and then 3 and then 5 because you know all the menus that are coming, because it'll stop you. The other interesting thing that came up was that when it said that I was going to be connected to an agent, they said, please be advised, some of our agents will be using cell phones, and the security of those conversations cannot be guaranteed.
Interesting.
And I'm supposed to accept that.
Well, I guess because they have a lot of people working from home, but why would they be on their cell phones? Like, they shouldn't be.
Well, maybe that's all they have. People have phones.
I guess so. Like,
CRA should give them a landline.
Yeah, CRA Canada Revenue should be giving these people with a landline. If, especially, we're 2 years into a pandemic, I'm sure these people have been working from home for probably, almost 2 years now. The fact that, you're right, they're still using a cell phone to conduct company business, it seems a bit odd.
Or personal cell phone.
Yeah, like a personal cell phone.
Give these people a secure way to communicate on very sensitive topics.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I managed to get it down to a bit of a science where I had to call back at least 7 or 8 times, because at one point it said, okay, you're in the hold, or you can now enter your name or your number and we'll call you back. And that was quite effective. When I finally was able to put myself in the queue, the first time they called back within like 10 minutes. The next time it was about an hour, but at least I didn't have to sit there listening to horrible hold music.
Yeah, right. But you think about how much time did you devote just to be able to get to a live person?
Well, to conduct the total,
how many hours?
The project itself took me probably 2 hours of either being on the phone talking to somebody or going through the process of trying to talk to somebody.
So the actual time spent talking to a live person, how long was that?
Oh, I'd say between the 2 times I had to connect, maybe 15 minutes each time.
Okay. So pretty much an hour and a half out of 2 hours then. was spent just trying to get a hold of a person.
Yeah, the bulk of the time was definitely the trying to get connected to someone part.
Yeah. Like, I realize it's one of those things where I'm sure every company says this, you know, we're short-staffed because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, but still, like, you don't expect a government agency to be overly efficient. But
no, that's true.
When you are taking an hour and a half of your time to be able to connect to live agents, that's a real problem. I mean, maybe it's one of those things where they're hoping that people will just get fed up and go away.
Oh, I think a lot of the stuff, they embed that sort of thing in there is to break people down so that they just get so worn out and tired that they just give up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they get, the other thing that all of within those prompts, when you finally were about to get connected, they said, please note, foul language or harassment of our agents is not tolerated. And that, I always think, when I heard that, I said, geez, these guys must get the crap beat out of them on a regular basis.
Yeah, you son of a bitch, do you realize how long I've been waiting for you?
Or, you guys say I owe this much money. How dare you capricious assholes.
Yeah. Yes, I highly doubt they have very many whimsical phone calls from customers.
Anyway, I did get what I needed. No whimsy at all in this. Yeah. And sometimes trying to find the humor is the best way to go. But that was my experience with the revenue agency. And I got what I needed in the end, but it sure took a hell of a long time to get there. All right, we're moving into what we're watching. Feels like we're just whipping through this episode. You got something on... So not always what we're watching. We call the segment what we're watching, but it can certainly cover what we're watching, what we're reading, what we're listening to. Anything interesting for you? Yeah.
So yeah, mine is what I'm watching. And it's not exactly a new item. It's actually kind of retro. So over the Christmas holidays with everyone sort of a slower pace, my son being off school, a couple of nights we kind of did like movie marathons. Mm-hmm. And we had the idea of doing a Rocky marathon, the Rocky boxing movies with Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Movies that I'd seen as a kid, but so many years ago that you kind of forget about them and you almost feels like you're watching them for the first time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a couple of nights over the holidays, we did a Rocky marathon, numbers 1 through 4. And we're going to watch the others. So we're going to finish off, I believe there's 8 movies in total, if you're including the more recent, the 2 Creed movies.
Oh, yeah, there's like Creed and, yeah.
Yeah, Creed 1 and 2. So, yeah, 8 movies in total. So, yeah, we're going to finish them all. So yeah, it was kind of a nice blast from the past and to have my son watch some old movies from the late 70s, early 80s. It seems really vintage right now. And my wife and I, we actually decided to watch The Godfather, not with my son in the room, by the way. Because yeah, The Godfather is one of those movies that, was one of my wife's father, one of his favorite movies, and my wife wanted to kind of pay tribute to watching his favorite movie. And Godfather is a classic. It's obviously one of the best movies ever made. One might argue the best. But it's a movie that it's actually 50 years old, if you can believe that. And yeah, it's one of those movies that I'm sure most people have seen it, but because it's been on TV so much, you've seen bits and pieces of it, but not from start to finish, all the way through.
And it's been spoofed a lot, so you see a lot of references in everything from The Simpsons to, other sort of satirical things where people will use the lines from, was it Don Corleone?
Like make him an offer, make you can't an offer. Refuse. Yeah, that type of thing.
Exactly. So it's always referenced. But I admit, I've watched the movie once from front to back, about 20 years ago, but I that wedding scene is at the beginning. There's a wedding scene.
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem to go on for about 2 hours?
The wedding scene is long, but there's various segments to it. Like it's not just all the entire wedding scene, but Yeah, it's an important scene because it sort of sets up the context for the rest of the movie. But yeah, it really is a great movie. Like it truly is one of the best, and it holds up well. Like even though it's over 50 years old, it's a fantastic movie to watch, and everyone should watch it at some point.
I want to watch it again. It's time.
Yeah. But yeah, we talk a lot about, what new shows are out there or what's new that you're watching. And yeah, this was kind of cool in that I'm going retro, circling back to some of the old classics, which should not be forgotten about. It's sometimes it's nice to put on a movie a good classic movie that you haven't seen in ages, or as I said, something that you watched perhaps as a kid, and your perception of that movie is completely changed, or something that you had forgotten about.
Yeah, you have a different experience with movies when I find you watched a movie at 20 and then you watch it again at 40 or 50 or whatever. It's probably a different experience. You're seeing it through different eyes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that Rocky IV is one of your personal favorites. Maybe our listeners would like to know how many times you saw Rocky IV in the theaters there, Clark.
Well, I'd say it probably would rank. This is a time when going to the movies didn't seem like as expensive as it used to be, or as it is now, I should say. I think I saw Rocky IV in the theater at least 10 times.
Wow.
And that movie, it's during the Cold War, right?
Yeah,
the
1985.
Russia-US thing.
1985 is released.
Right in the heat of the Cold War.
Yeah.
At least in our age bracket. I mean, the Cold War was going on since World War II ended, I guess, but for me, it was really at that scary point where maybe there could be, the big bad Soviet Union we kind of grew up with that fear of the Soviet Union and nuclear war. And I guess other generations also kind of did too, with Cuban Missile Crisis and things like that. But Rocky IV, one of my favorite movies, and we should do something like that. Maybe in one segment is, the movies that influenced us, or movies that made a real impact on us as kids. I think that would make a good segment.
Yeah. One of those movies that you made multiple trips to the theater to see. Because I don't know if I haven't really, I gotta admit, there's not many movies out there that I made multiple trips to see in the theaters. So the fact that you went 10 times, it's like, wow, I was pretty impressed when I heard that.
Sometimes it was, what are we going to watch? What are we going to go see today? What are we going to do? And we just didn't know what else to see, so we picked it. That was part of the reason we went 10 times, but also we loved the movie. Mike, who's been on the podcast, huge fan of that movie, and he probably went with me at least half the times that I went, if not all of the times. Yeah. All right, well, you didn't leave me any time to talk about what I'm watching. The segment's chime is over.
No, I want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, but the segment time is over.
It's okay. News and weather can wait.
Okay, so I'll be brief. I watched a Tony Robbins documentary. It's on Netflix called I'm Not Your Guru. I don't know if you've seen it as you're flicking by, or if it's crossed your radar or not, but I'm Not Your Guru. It's a Netflix documentary. And I really didn't know what to expect. Someone referenced it to me a little while ago, saying that they watched it, and that it's interesting to see how the people who do the shows that Tony Robbins does, like this one was Date with Destiny, I believe is the name of the thing he does once a year, I believe, in Boca Raton. And there's a documentary crew that follows the 6-day event that takes place. I was a little surprised. I thought it was one of these sort of undercover exposés, but it seems like Tony Robbins kind of hired a documentary crew to profile one of his Date with Destinies. So it was interesting to see it. Some of the conversations and topics, like he'll stand on stage and have 2,500 people in a room, and he'll then come into the audience occasionally and do I think they're called interventions or something like that, where he'll say, all right, who's got something going on in their life that we want to talk about? And then he'll pick somebody. He'll say, how about you, ma'am? And this woman stands up. I'll just give this one quick example. She stands up and she says, well, I'm not sure. I'm with my husband or my boyfriend, and I've been really mean to him lately because I just don't think he's been taking charge enough, and I've been like bossing him around, and I'm really resenting it. And Tony Robbins says, "Can everybody tell here? This woman doesn't even really want to be with this man, does she?" And says, "I want you to take out your cell phone." And so she pulls the phone out, and she's like, "Oh no!" He says, "I want you to call this man right now." And she's like, "No," and everyone's gasping. And so she dials the phone, and you can hear it. He's like, "Hello, babe." Like, babe, yeah, it's not working anymore. I don't think we can continue this relationship. And everybody's just listening in on it. It's super awkward. And that's just one example of the kind of interventions that goes on in this thing. And it's very interesting. I'd say the documentary I'd rate a 6 out of 10, maybe 7. I'm interested in this kind of stuff. As you know, I'm in the coaching realm, so I like watching what different styles of coaching are like. He's definitely on the provocative end, but it's worth watching, I think, to get an idea of what goes on in these Tony Robbins shows or Tony Robbins, Date with Destiny or whatever he puts on. But yeah,
it makes you wonder if these things are staged. That the phone call with her husband. Wonder if that's staged. I don't know.
Yeah, there is a feel. It didn't feel like it was, but to me, if I was the person, I would just be like, "There's no way I'm gonna put this on." I mean, she knew she was being filmed, I'm sure. Her face wasn't blurred or anything. The guy's voice was heard, so I imagine there was some permission that was taken at the end. That said, we're going to put this in a documentary. Are you okay with it? And she signed off on it. But that's just one of numerous things that go on. In the end, would I go to a Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins? I think I would. It's something I think I would do. So that's my what I'm watching, or what I was watching. I think it's worth checking out. You're giving me that look like I'm bored of this.
No.
Paul, you've got weird news for us. What do you got there?
Yeah, there was a headline that kind of jumped out at me because it seems so absurd. The headline was that a woman basically flashed her breasts at a motocross event in LA and was booed and thrown drinks at. So this was... All right,
you're saying that very softly, like you're a little embarrassed. Can you open that segment again? What's this weird news item you have for us?
The headline was that a woman flashed her breasts at a motocross event in LA. She was booed and thrown drinks at.
Ugh,
so that's your headline right there. So automatically you got to click on that and say, what the heck is going on here?
You got clickbaited.
Yeah, probably. So no, this was an actual real event. Happened a couple of weeks ago in LA. Mm-hmm. So, this woman basically flashed herself. I guess she was on, I don't think she was on like a Jumbotron, but she was just kind of in the crowd flashing her breasts to people in the stands and stuff like that. She must have been heavily inebriated, would be my guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, it created a big sort of a fight in the stands because a lot of people came over to her. A lot of women were basically pissed off the fact that this was, quote unquote, a family friendly event. And here she was, exposing herself when there's kids in the crowd, which, okay, I can sort of understand that. But yeah, apparently this really started to, get pretty ugly where people were challenging her to a fight and people throwing stuff at her. And I think eventually security had to remove her from the building. But yeah, it was just, it was one of those things where it just, one of those crazy headlines that just kind of grabs your attention there. I don't know, I will say this, going to a motocross event, although I haven't been to one myself, I wouldn't exactly call it an upper crust high society event. You're going to get a lot of drunk, inebriated people, a lot of people probably behaving badly. If I'm bringing my son to a motocross event, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see that type of thing.
That's awfully judgy of you.
Maybe it is, but it's probably the truth. I know.
Yeah,
what do you think
monster
about
truck
that?
rallies and motocross.
Yeah, if you're to bring your kids to a motocross, monster truck rally, would you be outraged if you were to see something like that?
I don't think I would expect to see something like that. I think that would be surprising to me if it happened. Maybe that's because if I was watching it here in Toronto, I think it would be less apt to be that crazy. But full disclosure, I've never gone to a monster truck rally or a motocross event, so I don't know what kind of crowd it would generate here in Toronto. Okay, well, yeah, that's interesting. You clearly fell for
I did.
That.
I stooped pretty low on that one. Yeah.
Well, this news story, it's an old one. This one happened back in 2019, but no, actually it was in 2007, but there was an article that recently brought it to light. In 2007, violinist Joshua Bell went busking in an experiment to see if the public would recognize one of the finest talents in the classical world. It did not work out like that. So this guy, renowned violinist Joshua Bell, was asked by, I think it was the Washington Post, to go down to the subway in Washington and play music like a busker would in a subway. And it was an experiment to see who would notice him, would people stop and listen, and how much money would he make. He put his violin case out, threw a couple bucks in it, I guess, to show that it was for tipping. And out of the 1,097 people that passed by, only 27 gave him money, and only 7 actually stopped and listened for any length of time. I'm going to challenge you. How much do you think he made in his... how long was he there for? I think it was 45 minutes. Let's see. No, I don't see the time. I think it was 40 minutes he was there. How much money do you think he made?
Okay, so 27 people gave money.
Yeah, that helps you a little bit, I guess.
I don't know, maybe $30, $40?
He actually made $52.
Okay, all right.
And $20 of that was from one person who did recognize him. So actually that lends more support to what you said, which it was $32 if not for the $20 donation. So yeah. Right, you're right in there. But I don't know. What do you think of that? Like, what does that mean? Why does this renowned violinist not have like 1,000 people around him when apparently the night before he played to an audience of 3,000 people who, you could hear a pin drop. It was such a important event that people wanted to listen to. So why only 27 people stop and watch this guy, or gave him money and only
yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, hardly anyone stopped. 27 gave him money and 7 stopped to listen for any length of time.
Like you are in a subway station, so a lot of people just aren't in the right frame of mind to be appreciating good music. People are commuting, they're trying to get home or get to the office, whatever it might be. So yeah, people aren't really going to be sort of in tune to listening to that. Yeah, it's hard to say. I guess people just think that he just happens to be a really good amateur violinist. You would not expect to have, an award-winning professional violinist playing in a subway station. So a lot of people. But
if Coldplay was in the lobby and playing, no one would expect them to be there. But
if you were from that world, if you were familiar with that artist, then if you say, "Hey, that's Joshua Bell," or "Hey, that's Chris Martin from Coldplay," in the subway station, yeah, you would stop and listen. But a lot of people, if let's say Chris Martin was playing in a disguise and you just thought it was some regular band that was playing in a subway station, you'd say, "Wow, those guys sound like Coldplay," and you'd probably just keep walking on, and because I got to get to my meeting. So yeah, I think if you...
It was at like 8:45 in the morning,
Yeah,
by the way,
exactly.
too. So people were rushing to work and stuff.
For sure. So if you knew who that person was, if there's a sign saying, award-winning violinist Joshua Bell, you probably would have a lot more people that would stop and listen and say, oh, wow, this guy's something.
So I think two things come into effect. One is context. The context that this guy is in a subway station. And so there's no reference to him or his name at all, and people are on their way to work. So the context of him just automatically creates there's not any fanfare around it, so why would people really get it? Like you said, it just could have been a really good guy, a busker, and if you're not a classical music person, you might also not be interested, which is the second reason, I think, as well. He would not have had much attention because that genre of music may only attract a certain type of crowd to want to stop and listen.
Yeah, because a lot of people may not be familiar with Joshua Bell or may not be familiar with being able to discern as to what makes good music, especially, for the violin, classical music. It's more of a select segment of the population that would appreciate the skill that he would have in playing the violin. But the majority of the people walking by would probably think, hey, wow, that guy sounds pretty cool. Hey, good job.
So he went in.
And just keep walking and say, man, I got to get to my meeting or I'm going to be late.
So in 2007, he did this, but then apparently there's a sequel. In 2014, he went back, but this time his appearance was announced. Mm-hmm. And they had signs up and a stage, and thousands of people, it gathered quite a crowd. Yeah. Like a lot of people gathered around and watched it, and it was a big deal. So anyway, I just thought it was an old story, but an interesting one. How context and that sort of thing can one day, the night before, make you pay $200 a ticket to see something, and the next day you're barely noticed.
Yeah, so in other words, the moral of the story is don't pay $200 for a ticket. Wait till your act goes to the subway station, bring a lawn chair, and then you get the concert for free, right?
Or $20 if you were one generous fan.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got to go. It's been a good one. This is actually the first episode since in 2022 that we've broadcast. This is our first 2022 episode, episode 66, I think it is.
Yep.
So,
well, yeah, we're hoping for bigger and better things for 2022. Hopefully, it's a whimsical year, and many more really good episodes to come.
Nothing better than a year full of whimsy.
Absolutely.